Hey everybody, just wanted to give you a quick tutorial on MLA citations and formatting in case you need one before your final draft of Essay 1 is due. So the first thing to point out to you is just simply where you can find the handout about MLA citations and formatting and stuff. So one key way to find it is if you go to modules, which is where we're at right now. And then if you go to this introductory course materials and resources, that's right at the top of the page here, you'll notice if you scroll down, there's a few MLA stuff to help. Here's the essay grading criteria too, which you can take a look at to kind of see how I calculate what sort of grade to give you. And then here's MLA help. This is the Purdue Online Writing Lab, which we'll take a look at in just a moment. But then here's the handout for MLA citations, formatting, quote integration, which is what we're going to look at in just a moment. So that's it, introductory course modules. I also put it right by the Essay 1 final draft. So you can find the copy of the same thing right there. So let's just go to that page, see what that looks like there. And actually, before we do that, let's go to that website I was telling you about. So if we go back to this introductory course modules here, you'll notice MLA Help, the Purdue Online Writing Lab, or OWL. That's this right here. So this is the website that's really best for figuring out how to do citations. They have MLA formatting and style guide, and they also have MLA citations help, and also APA style if you're more used to that. And I just want to say too at the top of the tutorial here that if you are really used to APA and you would prefer to use that for your essays, just kind of let me know, give me a heads up you're going to be using APA, and then that's totally fine to use APA. My kind of field uses MLA, so that's basically what I require. But if you would like to use APA, that's also fine. So basically, this website just has a bunch of resources to tell you how to do various kinds of things about MLA citations. So there's an overview here, general formatting, a place for how to do in-text citations, how to format quotations, endnotes and footnotes. You don't really have to worry about that. But then it tells you just various kinds of sources that you might be using. How do you cite a book? How do you cite a magazine or periodical? How do you cite an electronic source? Other sources like a YouTube link or something like that. Gives you a sample works cited page. There's a sample paper. So there's tons of resources here about how to do MLA style. So if my particular handout, you can't find what you need, you can search for how to do it here. So, but let's just go over some of the basics of the handout: citations, formatting, and quote integration. And we should start with the most basic element of MLA citations and quotation integration. The main reason why there's any kind of citation system that's used is to avoid plagiarism in academic writing. So the idea is in academic writing, you are always going to be referencing and using and including other people's writing and works and ideas in your writing. So the main question is, how do I import or use those ideas and other people's work in my writing to make clear to your reader which stuff is yours and which stuff is from somewhere else. So, and the idea of that is you don't want to imply to your reader that everything is yours and that you came up with all of it. So you want to figure out some way to indicate to your reader which stuff is yours and which stuff isn't. Because when you don't make clear to your reader which is yours and which isn't, they will assume it's yours. And that's, again, considered plagiarism. And plagiarism really is, you can think of it as a kind of a theft of someone else's work, specifically referencing ideas, but also sentences and even the structure of something you can borrow from someone else. So in terms of how to avoid plagiarism, how to avoid using someone else's ideas or words or sentences or phrases and making it look like it's your own. You want to make clear to your reader that it is not yours, it's from someone else. So a few rules of thumb for how to avoid plagiarism. It must be clear to your readers where each piece of information in your essay comes from. If you don't tell your reader where a particular piece of information is from, they will assume it is yours and you came up with it and you created it. So if you did not, you need to make clear that you did not. So, and we'll talk about, of course, how to make that clear. Also, second rule of thumb, must be clear which ideas of which are yours and which are not. This is really important for plagiarism too. Students, especially students I work with that are just coming out of a high school environment, also perhaps they haven't been trained very well about this whole idea that if you take an idea from someone else, a lot of my high school students assume that if you take an idea and just put it in your own words, then that's enough to avoid plagiarism. The problem with that is you're still taking the idea. Even if you put it in your own words, the idea is not yours. So basically, just paraphrasing or summarizing someone else's idea is not avoiding plagiarism. You're still stealing the idea and presenting it as yours. So if you use someone else's idea in your writing, it's really important to tell your reader that it's not your idea. So you tell where the idea came from. And then finally, it must be clear which words and sentences are yours and which are not. So anytime you use even just a single phrase from someone else or a single word or a term from someone else, you should make clear to your reader that it is not your word or phrase. All right, so the main way to avoid plagiarism and the main way to make it clear to your readers where information, ideas, and words or language are coming from is to use a documentation system like MLA. So let's just start actually with, I know in terms of structure here, I have in-text citations first, but let's actually start with the works cited page. We'll scroll down here. So here's a section on works cited page. Again, this is review for probably most of you, but essentially the works cited page is the very final page of your essay, a separate page all by itself that lists all of the outside sources that you have used in your essay in some way. Any sources that you have directly referred to or quoted or borrowed ideas from. Now, it could be the case that when you are working on your essay, maybe you've looked at a few different articles or pieces, but you say you looked at 5, but you only used words or ideas from one of those 5 sources. You only have to put that one source in your works cited page. You don't have to mention that you are using these other 4 sources if you did not use any words or ideas from those sources. So again, a works cited page is only what's directly referenced in your essay. So basic rule of thumb with a works cited page is you want to make sure that you tell your reader who the author is of whatever source that you have offered. You're going to put your citations in alphabetical order. We'll take a look. You're going to use left hanging indent. We'll take a look at that. And also punctuation is really important. So, and again, we'll look at an example in just a moment. And also just a general rule for readings and films. A lot of you are probably familiar with how to do a reading for MLA citations, but some of you may have never done a film before. So the general rule for readings is anytime you list whatever reading you used, and let's just assume like one of the sources you're going to be using is Donald Spoto's The Art of Alfred Hitchcock. So the general rule for that reading is when you write out the citation at the end of the page for your reader is you'll put the author's name, Spoto, of course, and then you'll need to include the information. So the title of the source, in this case, it would be The Art of Alfred Hitchcock. And then it kind of goes like this: the title of the container, other contributors, the version, the number, the publisher, the publication, the date, and location. And it's not depending on the book, you're not necessarily including all of that information, or depending on what kind of source it is. If you are citing a magazine article, the container would be the magazine title. In this case, you're just using a book, and it's just by Donald Spoto. There isn't really a publisher or any other else. This is the only edition, so you don't have to put an edition. So you would just go down to the publisher, and then the date and the location. So that's the general rule of thumb for readings. General rule of thumb for films is you list the title first. So with the reading, you're putting the author's name first, but with the film, you're listing the title first. So you list the title, and then you are going to include the director, the studio or distributor, the release year, and if it's relevant, you're going to list the performers' names. And generally, I would include this. So let's actually just look at a few examples here of how to do a works cited page citation. So here I have 3 citations. say I've written an essay about the lodger, and I've used quotations or ideas from Donald Spoto, and I've used quotations or ideas from Francois Truffaut's Hitchcock interviews. So I'm alphabetizing everything. So notice how I have the lodger, Spoto, and then Truffaut. So, and notice also how everything has this left hanging indent. So my 3 works, they're not numbered, but they're sort of hanging out there on the left-hand side, the first line, and then the second line of the citation is indented, and then you start with a new citation, it hangs out to the left. So here's what the lodger looks like. So you start with the title, the lodger. Notice how it is in italics. Anytime you use offer a movie title, you're going to make sure it's in italics. You could also choose to use underlining instead of italics if you want. Either way, it doesn't really matter. You just need to be consistent. I like italics. I like the way it looks better than underlining. So that's just kind of my choice, but it's up to you if you want to do italics or underlining. But movie titles are, in any case, always underlined or italicized. So you have the movie title and then a period, where punctuation is important. So you put a period after that. And then you have this phrase directed by, and of course it's Alfred Hitchcock. So directed by Alfred Hitchcock. Then you have a comma. And then you have this phrase performances by. And you could put the first 3 or 4 performers either as they're listed in the credits of the film or as they're listed in the IMDb page. And you put first and last names and then an and before the last performer you list. Then you're going to have a comma. And then the studio or distributor was Gainsborough Pictures. So you put that there, a comma. And then the date which the year was, or the film was released, and then a period at the end. So films are actually pretty easy to do. If you go to, I hope all of you are familiar with IMDb, but just in case, let's go to IMDb, Internet Movie Database. You can look up any movie on this website and it will tell you the directors and the stars and the distributor. So this will give you all the information that you need, which might be especially helpful if you don't have a DVD copy of the movie. So it tells you right at the top there, the title, the date, the director, and then the stars right there. So it's pretty easy. And then if you need to find the studio or distributor, you have to go down a bit farther to find that. But you'll find it. Here's the production company, Gainsborough Pictures, right there. All right, so IMDb is your friend. Make use of IMDb this quarter if you need information about a movie for how to do the citation. Here we already mentioned how to do Donald's photo, but let's just look at the formatting of it. So it always goes author last name first, and then a comma, and then first name, then period. Then you have the title of the book, including the subtitle. So The Art of Alfred Hitchcock, 50 Years of His Motion Pictures. It's in italics. Books are always put in italics, just like movies, or underlining if you choose underlining. And then again, our comma is important, comma. Oh, and I guess it is an edition. So you want to make sure that you include what edition the book there is, second edition, period, comma. Anchor, that's the publisher. Then the comma, and then the year in which it was published. The most recent year, you want to put the most recent year, it was the edition you have came out, and then a period at the end. Similar with the Truffaut interviews. So you have Truffaut, even though it's interviews, Truffaut is the one really that put the book together. So you have Truffaut, comma, Francois, period. Hitchcock is the title of the book, so it's in italics, put a period. It is the revised edition. Here's the publisher, Simon & Schuster, and the most recent edition is 1984. So that's how works cited citations would look like. If you're doing blackmail or 39 steps, obviously you would do something different than the lodger there, but that's the basic kind of format. And actually, let's just look at Sarah's essay here. So you can see a works cited page as it's set up in a essay format. Notice how her last page here, page 8, she has hardly any on this page, but she starts a full new page for the works cited page. So here's what a works cited page should look like in terms of the basic formatting. You notice how there is this works cited right at the top. It's centered. W is capitalized, C is capitalized. Also notice how it's not underlined, it's not bolded. The font is not any different. The only thing that it distinguishes it is it's centered and the W and the C are capitalized. Then she's listed the 39 steps. She referenced the lodger in her essay. She didn't talk about it too much, but she did reference it. So she includes it in her works cited page. And then she has Donald Spoto's book and Francois Truffaut's book. So, and that's again kind of how it should look. So it's alphabetized according to each citation, each of the works that she references in her essay, and it is hanging out there on the left. The first line of each citation is out to the left. So that's basically what your works cited page should look like. And honestly, you're certainly welcome to sort of copy and paste this kind of thing, or copy and paste it from my citations if that's helpful for you. Just make sure that your formatting is tweaked and that you actually are putting in whatever works you have. If you wrote about 39 steps and you use Spoto and Truffaut in your essay, it's pretty easy to just copy and paste that there and put it in your works cited page and then delete the lodger. You haven't done that. Or you can change it out for the blackmail or whatever. All right, let's go to in-text citations. So basically, at the end of your paper, right, this is the list of all the works that you have referenced or used in your essay in some way. Now, you want to make sure, remember, the plagiarism rule is it has to be clear to your readers which ideas or which are not. And it has to be clear not just by the end of your essay that you used some outside sources, but it has to be clear in the moment when the reader is reading your essay which idea is yours and which is not. So if you reference an idea from Truffaut in the middle of your essay, you have to let your reader know in some way in that moment in your essay that it's from Truffaut. And that's where in-text citations come in. So basically, what in-text citations do, it's this, and again, a lot of you, this is probably a review for you, but basically what in-text citations do is it's this little tag in the middle of your essay that lets your reader know you're using an idea or a word or a phrase or a sentence from some other source. And that tag links your reader back to the works cited page. So actually, before we look at some examples of in-text citations, let me just show you what I mean here. So if we go back to Sarah's essay, she actually has an in-text citation right away in the first paragraph of her essay. So her first sentence, according to biographer Donald Spoto, upon release of the 1935 film 39 Steps, director Alfred Hitchcock, quote, urged audiences to see it in all his films at least 3 times in order to pick out all the details and intention behind them, in order to get deeper into things. And then she has an in-text citation here, which is just a number, but it is an indication to the reader that will take the reader to the works cited page at the end. So she told us right away as readers that it was Donald Spoto that was giving this quote. So we know in the works cited page, you will look for Spoto, and then this here will tell you what page number it is. So basically, if you as a reader, imagine you're a reader reading Sarah's essay, you've never read Donald Spoto's book, but you're like, oh, Donald Spoto said that. That's interesting. I wonder where he said that. So if you're curious in the middle of the essay, you would go all the way to the works cited page and you're going to look for Spoto. And then because it's alphabetized, you can easily find Spoto. There's Spoto, and then you can see, oh, it's in this book called The Art of Alfred Hitchcock, 50 Years of His Motion Pictures. And you know it's on page 42 of that book, right? Because Sarah put the page number there, or 46. The page number there for us as readers to find it. So an in-text citation, again, is here's what Donald Spoto said, and she tells us right away where that came from. We know someone else said it, we know who said it, and we know where it came from right away. She quotes Spoto again, and then she gives another tag, comes from a different spot in his book, so she puts another in-text citation there. So we can find another example. Here she quotes Truffaut, right? And this time you would then look for Truffaut in the works cited page at the end, and you would know that it comes from page 47 of Truffaut's book. But let's just look at an overview of in-text citations. So basically in an in-text citation, you're going to include the author's name if it's not already clarified in your writing. With Sarah's example here, in her sentence, she told us as readers that it was Donald Spoto that was saying this quote that she was introducing. So she doesn't need to include Spoto here. Now, if she hadn't told us it was Spoto, she would need to include Spoto's name right there in the in-text citation. But because Spoto is here, when she's introducing the quote, she doesn't need to include Spoto here. So she can just take that out. Okay. If you include quotations from films, you do not need to include parenthetical citations. We'll get that from just a moment in just a moment. If citing multiple films in one paper, do include the first couple words. I'll show you an example of that in a moment. Include page numbers when available. So just like we saw with Sarah's essay. Bottom line, parenthetical citations point readers to the end source information. So again, it's a tag that points us as readers to the works cited page. Let's just look at a few examples to kind of expand what we were saying from Sarah's essay. So here's an imaginary essay. As we study blackmail, it will be important to ask how the film demonstrates, quote, a kind of moral cynicism, end quote. And then here's my in-text citation, Spoto with 22. Now, one thing you would notice in this sentence is I don't tell my readers who said this, a kind of moral cynicism. I don't tell them in my sentence itself. So the one thing that this in-text citation does is it tells your reader right away who said it and then what page it's on, right? So whenever you do offer a quotation or you reference some idea from another writer or person, you need to make sure that your reader knows who said it right away. In this example, kind of like what we saw in Sarah's essay, because I have who said the quotation in the middle of the sentence itself, I don't need to include that in the citation. So in Spoto's discussion of blackmail, he writes, quote, that figures representing law and order are themselves eminently corruptible is a theme in Hitchcock's films. And then again, because I have Spoto and I'm introducing to the reader, I'm already telling your reader it's Spoto, all I need in the citation is just the page number. Now, films. Okay, so that's with written texts, right? So again, but a lot of you are maybe not familiar with how to use in-text citations for films. And the good news is you really don't have to use in-text citations for films for the most part. If it's clear to your reader what film you're referencing, what scene from what film you're referencing, what piece of dialogue from what film you're referencing, you don't need to include a citation. So for here example, Hitchcock often used birds in his films. For example, in Blackmail, the main character Alice has a caged bird whose loud repeated chirps are unsettling. So obviously that's not on a page, and obviously I don't need to include the author. Your reader knows what film it's from, and so you don't need to include any citation at all. So don't worry about in-text citations. A lot of you are just focusing on one film for your essay. So say if you're writing just about 39 steps and it's clear that whatever scene you're describing is from 39 steps, you don't have to put an in-text citation if you're using a quote from that film or describing a scene. Now, the some exceptions would be perhaps maybe you're writing about more than one film and it's not clear to your reader what film you're referencing in the essay. It's hard to imagine some examples what would be like that, but here's one example where that might be the case. Hitchcock often used birds, real birds or images of birds in his films. A caged bird owned by the main character, then I put a little tag blackmail there, a hummingbird lapel pin, then I put a tag vertigo, stuffed birds, then I put psycho, and of course attack birds, the birds. So in each of those cases, I am referencing a specific film, and your reader won't know automatically which film you're referencing. So I do put a citation there, and notice how I just put the film's title. I don't have to put the Hitchcock. It would be confusing, right, if I put Hitchcock. So I need to reference the actual title of the film if you're doing that. Most of you probably won't need to do that, but just in case you do, that's how you would do it. Okay, a few other things. We mentioned how to punctuate titles, italicize or underline titles of longer works, full-length autobiographies, plays, novels, feature films, and other major works like Donald Spoto's book or Truffaut's book. Put quotations in the titles of shorter works, nonfiction essays, articles, short stories, songs, short films, etc. So some of you may be going online and finding some articles to quote in your essay. And if that's the case, you would put the title of that article in quotation marks. Use ellipses. One thing you want to be careful about is when you're including a quotation from any of your outside sources, if you're using Spoto or Truffaut or some other outside source in your essay, is be careful about how you use the quotation. One thing you want to do is try to use as short as quotations as possible. And if there's a really long quotation, sometimes it's possible to take out part of the quotation and only to leave out some of the words. In that case, what you would do is you use this thing called the ellipses. It's this dot, dot, dot. And that indicates to your reader that you've taken out part of the quotation. So that can be sometimes very effective to include just part of a quotation for in an essay because maybe the entire quotation includes stuff that isn't really necessary to help your readers understand the quote itself, and it's not really relevant to your essay, so you can take it out. Just want to see if Sarah did that anywhere to give you an example. Yeah, here's an example. So here, in fact, Spoto argues the 39 steps, dot, 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 stands alone in the genre as a survivor, blah, blah, blah. So what this indicates to us here is that Donald Spoto actually said a few other things besides that before he said 39 steps stands alone. But Sarah is letting us know that she took out a few of the words. Now, there could have been some kind of parenthetical phrase there, or maybe he said something else about the 39 steps, but she doesn't really care about that part of it. And it doesn't really hurt the actual content of the meaning of the quote for her to take out those words. So she was able to take it out and to give us as readers a relatively short quotation, which is again what you're going for. You don't want to overwhelm your reader with really long quotations unless there is a really long quotation that's really, really important and everything in it is important for developing your argument. But you can use this dot, dot, dot here. Just want to see if there's any other example of using a brackets here that she has so I can show you. I don't see one. But the other thing I wanted to show you is sometimes when you're using a quotation and including it into an essay, to sort of make the essay read more effectively, sometimes you can change little pieces of a word to make it fit a little bit better. I don't know if I can give you see an example here. Here's an example. Okay, so here's a quotation. Spoto urged audiences to see it in all his films at least 33 times. So say, for example, it's maybe not clear to your reader what the it is referring to. You know what the it is. So what you can do is you take that it out and you he's referring to the 39 steps. So you would put brackets there. And that is an indication to your reader that you're not using the original word of the quotation, but you are putting the replacement for you're retaining the meaning of the sentence, but it's not the exact language of the quotation. So that's another thing that's possible to do if you need to shift the quotation a little bit. And here it's clear she didn't need to do that because it is clear from the context that it's talking about the 39 steps. But there might be some cases where you need to put brackets as it's described here. Use square brackets to change words in a quote. The other major thing that two more things I wanted to talk to you about MLA formatting and citations is one really important thing is thinking about how you incorporate quotations into your essay. The idea is you kind of want to make it as organic as possible, so that when you put a quotation from Spoto or Truffaut or whatever it is in your essay, there's a nice kind of flow to your sentence and to the essay itself when you include that quotation. So the basic formula for a quotation is you can kind of think of it as a quotation sandwich, and maybe this is what you've heard before, but basically you want to have bread, meat and cheese, and bread like a sandwich. So the bread is where you introduce the quotation or you introduce whatever outside source you're using. and then you include the quotation itself, and then you put more, you explain and analyze it on the other side of it. So whenever you do include a quotation, you always want to introduce the quotation in some way, and then you offer the quotation, and then you explain or reflect upon the quotation. So the quotation never stands by itself. It's never just plunked in the middle of your essay. You introduce it, you offer it, and then you talk about it, and you talk about how it's relevant to your point. So just as an example here, I mean, this whole phrase here is an introduction. Sarah's giving us an introduction to this quote that she offered. And then we'll also note that she doesn't really leave this quotation to stand on its own. Let's see, Alfred Hitchcock urged audiences to see his films at least 3 times to get to the deeper of things. And then she comments on what that means, or she extrapolates out a little bit. She says, given that instruction, it's not difficult to infer complex social commentary in what is ostensibly a straightforward spy thriller. So she doesn't leave the quotation to sit by itself to let us figure out kind of where she's going to take it and what she's going to do with it. She talks about this instruction, and then she talks about this idea that, well, a spy thriller like 39 Steps is going to have complex social commentary because Hitchcock in this quote just told us that things will get deeper. So really every time you want to introduce the quote, and then after the quote, offer some commentary on what it means and how it connects to your point. So that's what the idea of a quotation sandwich is. Always introduce it, offer the quote, and then reflect upon it. The last quickly thing we should go over is just how to set up your essay on the page itself. We'll look at Sarah's essay again in just a moment, but the basic rule of thumb is use Times New Roman font, 12 point or equivalent, or the equivalent font. You can use something like Arial font or something like that too. You're always going to want to have a header in the top right. We'll look at that in just a moment. The entire essay is double spaced. We'll look at that in just a moment. The title is plainly formatted, so it's not bolded or underlined. We'll look at that in a moment. No title page necessary for MLA. So let's look at Sarah's essay again. So the first thing to note is the entire essay is in double spacing. There's no single spacing anywhere, or there's no extra spacing anywhere. It's all double spaced. The other thing to note is that she has pagination on every page in the top right-hand corner there. It's last name and page number, last name space page number, and that is included on every single page all the way to the works cited page. On the first page, you're going to include your student information and class information. So you have your name first, and then the class used to be 194, now it's 294. And then you have the name of the instructor. You can put my full name, you can put Professor Melissa Taminga, you can put Prof. Melissa Taminga. As long as you have my full name, that's fine. And then you include the date that you turned it in or the date you completed it. Either one really, really works. So make sure all that information is there in that order. And then here's the title. You'll notice it's plainly formatted, meaning it's not bolded, it's not underlined, it's not a fancy font. It's just quite plain. The only thing that makes it different is that it's centered in the middle of the top before the first line of the essay, and then you have capitalization. One other thing to note too is that she uses the title of the film, The 39 Steps, in her title. So her entire title is not italicized, but to let us know that this is a movie title, she italicizes it within her own title. So if you are including the title of your film in your essay title, then you should italicize the movie title. All right, I think that's everything for formatting. You also make sure that your margins are about 1 inch on every side. And we already looked at the works cited page, so I think that should be pretty clear. The works cited page is also all double spaced as well, so make sure that you do that. All right, if you have any questions about any MLA citations or formatting, or if you want me to take a look at your essay before you turn it in, I am happy to do that. But please get in touch if you would like any help with your essay and formatting your essay in terms of MLA stuff.